listening to the Shared Security Podcast with Tom Eston and Scott Wright, exploring the trust you put in people, apps, and technology.
We bring you stories, advice, and tips to help you make better risk decisions because nobody else can make them for you. The Shared Security Podcast is sponsored by Silent Pocket. With their patented Faraday cage product line of phone cases, wallets, and bags, you can block all wireless signals, which will make your devices instantly untrackable, unhackable, and undetectable. Visit silent-pocket.com for more details.
Hello and welcome to the Shared Security Podcast, episode 75 for April 16th, 2018. I'm Scott Wright, the Streetwise Security Coach here in Ottawa, Canada, with Tom Eston in Cleveland. And today we have a great show with not one but two special guests. And we're going to spend some time exploring what's happening on the academic side of cybersecurity. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Tom and he can introduce our guests for today.
Thanks, Scott. So we have two great guests today for our episode on cybersecurity education. First, I'm going to introduce Gotham Sharma. He serves as the managing director of the ExcelTech Consulting Group, where he manages daily operations of the New York City-based cybersecurity advisory firm. Previously, he was a Wall Street consultant for global technology operations at various Fortune 500 organizations. And then Gotham left financial services to consult for the nonprofit world, where he focused on youth development and STEM education. In particular, his work centers around designing career and technical education programs for traditionally disconnected young adults. Welcome, Gotham.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.
Great to be here.
And we also have Dr. Brian Krupp, who is an assistant professor in the computer science department at Baldwin Wallace University. He is the faculty advisor of the Mobile Privacy and Security Research Group, where their current research is investigating methods to increase consumer awareness of privacy issues in smartphone and tablet applications. He's also the faculty advisor of CS+, which provides computer science opportunities for elementary to high school students through tech camps, school visits, and partnerships in the Northeast Ohio region. Welcome, Dr. Krupp.
Thanks for having me.
So the first question, is there really a shortage of cybersecurity talent, or is this just a myth?
Well, I think that there's a general shortage in computing, right? We see a lot of national efforts of trying to get more students involved in computing with the CS for All movement and organizations like code.org. One of the things that we've been experiencing at BW, though, is we have a computer network security program, and it's been gaining a lot of interest. But it's really hard to gauge if that's more of a national metric, right? I'm not sure if it's getting the interest that it needs. I think too often what we find when we get high school students coming into college is that a lot of the students that we get when we ask them, what do you want to do in computing? All too often the answer is they want to be a game developer. And I think that while it's good to have that kind of goal. Obviously, those positions there aren't as many positions available in the industry as there is in a wide range area of computing, right? But I think that students just because they spend so much time interacting with the computer, they spend so much time gaming, that they naturally get an interest towards that. I think that the reason why there may be that shortage is because while they're playing those games in high school, they're not getting the different type of exposure towards other areas of computing, like cybersecurity, early on, and so they don't really see it until much later on, and then their major might be in software engineering or computer science, and they don't have the opportunity to focus on it.
Interesting. So, what's your take on that, Gotham, from your perspective?
Yeah, definitely. I'm very familiar with what Dr. Krupp saying about the game design interest that students have, and that's a big thing in terms of interest, right? And how do we funnel that into some of these more STEM-based careers like software engineering and cybersecurity? So I think that's a great, just using that idea of gamification, right? Using this idea of they're they're really into gaming. A lot of students who are kind of veering into technology have been gamers. How do we kind of capitalize on that? And I think bridging that by creating some sort of gamified learning platforms, and we're seeing some of those pop up here and there. In terms of the crisis, or what we're calling it, the hiring crisis that you hear about often in cyber, one of the big parts that I think is demand is increasing rapidly, right? You hear about all these breaches in the news, and as soon as that happens, other companies are waking up and say, hey, we need some of that also. We need some of that talent, and we need some of that security talent here to kind of protect ourselves. And a big part of that, from what I'm seeing, is the lack of general awareness of what does a career in cyber really entail, right? What will I be doing? And there's a variety of ways that we can solve that. We can get into that later. But generally, I tend to believe the shortage, because we're seeing constantly everything from the government to the entertainment sector. Everyone's really kind of reaching out for these roles and struggling to recruit them. So I definitely believe that there is a shortage.
Yeah, very cool. It's actually very interesting for me to hear from both of you that the gamification is something that is an important factor. It looks like it's coming from a couple of ways that I almost didn't really expect, but I think it makes sense from what you're saying. Is people who have grown up playing games are, they sort of think of that as being a large factor or significant part of what's available in terms of jobs. But I actually am starting to build gamified cybersecurity e-learning tools myself as with a team, and so I'm interested in hearing from people who want to do that. But I think you're right that there are a lot more opportunities than just that. But it is an interesting way to get people into the field for sure.
And I think that if you were to let students know, or high school, or whatever range, know that what's neat about this field is that as opposed to maybe a software engineering discipline where you have your hackathons and things like that, a lot of those type of events started in cybersecurity, right? So letting them know, look, this isn't going to be a class where you just kind of come in, you learn about these topics, maybe you write a program. You're going to learn how to secure and defend systems. You're also going to learn how to poke holes in those systems. And I think what is gained interest from students in our area is that part of our program is competing on several different teams that we offer, and I think that that's a real interest in students. So, selling that as a kind of gamification, knowing that they'll compete with other students in a team setting, I think can be interesting to them.
Yeah, I mean, I see so many people when I talk to them, and just so many different ways that gamification itself is going to impact business, not just for cybersecurity, but for proficiency in a lot of skills. So it'll be really interesting to see how this all unfolds.
What are some programs that you guys have been involved with, or things that work to kind of help drive that interest around cybersecurity careers?
I think early on, if you can get into the high schools and not just focus on the coding boot camps, which seems to be the most popular route right now, because you can go in there, you can do an hour of code, you can leave, and you can leave an impression. But going in there and kind of showing some simple things in cybersecurity, such as how easy it is to generate like a phishing email, for example. Showing students that when I open up the browser, I could take a look at some of the local storage or some of the cookies and just kind of see how I'm being tracked from a privacy perspective, or opening Burp Suite and showing them what traffic's passing from a mobile device and saying, okay, this Weather Channel application is getting my location. Where else is it sending? Just kind of peeling back those layers and just opening their eyes a little bit, will pique their interest. But I also think that students tend to have this idea that these type of positions typically are the bad type of hackers, right? That if I get these skills, I'm going to be doing something malicious, right? They don't see the other side of it, that, well, I can also be protecting a network. I can also be doing the ethical hacking before something bad happens. I think letting them realize that there's other types of careers in this area, and there's more than just game development, software development. Letting them know about those careers, that's important to do early on so they can start thinking about it.
Neat. Are there any particular technical areas that you find there's either a particular need for more cybersecurity skills among the general student population or areas that are of particular interest technologically that they would have?
Well, I think early on, as far as college education goes, that it is really important for us to implement good programming practices early, right? Mm-hmm. So, not concatenating a string together and feeding it through a SQL query, right? So showing them early on, this is the right way to do it before they establish some bad habits. I think those type of things are critical to develop early on.
Yeah, like also application security really then.
Right.
Yeah, cool.
So maybe taking a step back even further down to like high school, grade school level, is there anything that kids can get involved in or what their parents could maybe get them involved with if they have an interest in technology?
I think a lot of these, if you think about Girls Who Code and things like a lot of programs that are popping up similar to that, great way to just kind of get your feet wet, even if it is starting off with like a coding camp or a coding boot camp, just kind of thinking in that technical way is supremely beneficial. And then kind of as kids can develop their own interests and figure out what's interesting to them and go down those paths, right? With supportive mentors and school on resources that are in schools and all that stuff. But even looking at programming as a starting point, I don't see too much of a problem with that either.
Yeah, I agree with that too. Getting kids involved in programming at an early age, I think that really develops critical thinking skills and, those thinking out of the box behaviors, which are so important in really any cybersecurity career. It doesn't necessarily have to be technical, but those are hugely beneficial. I was also going to say that there's a lot of conferences now, like DEF CON, the big hacking conference in Las Vegas. They do a DEF CON Kids, where it's very focused on young kids and introducing them to security topics and those types of things. So there are more and more resources out there, I think, for younger kids to kind of explore, what a career in cybersecurity might be like.
Definitely. I just read about the Girl Scouts implementing a new cyber badge, right? So that's existing organizations that are adding or technology components. I think that's really a powerful strategy as well.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think where we're going to see the big push and hopefully where that pipeline starts to grow a little bit and the amount of jobs that can't be filled narrows is with the big push of computer science in the schools. There's more and more states that are counting CS as a requirement towards graduation. There's more and more funding that's trying to get these type of programs started. So hopefully that will start to make a dent here. I think we're already starting to see, some of that even in higher ed where we see more students coming in with a programming experience. The challenge for us though is that we get these students now that had one of those programming classes and now they enter our curriculum. It's like, okay, well, where do we put them at, right? So there's not as equitable access to computer science as hopefully there will be in the future. But that kind of leaves us at a point where, okay, where do we start these kids at as far as our program goes?
Yeah, it's a good point. Also, I was going to ask if I don't know what sort of curriculum you would cover academically for students, but in business school, you often get like a case study type of methodology. Do you do that within the security studies where you take an incident of real life and dissect it, see what went wrong and what the technical vulnerabilities were?
Yeah, we do a information security, privacy, and ethics course. For the most part, we'll have case studies in there, but we also try to tie them into recent events. So, as an example, a couple of years when I taught it, the big issue was the FBI wanting a backdoor on the iPhones. Right, this was in the San Bernardino shooting, and one of the things I did in the class is that we actually had a debate to where students could switch on to go on either side debate, either pro for having a backdoor or against having a backdoor. But I think it's good to have that dialogue, to have that discussion and kind of see how students move back and forth. But those type of events, I think tying them into current issues and really there's no shortage of them, right?
It's getting every day.
Yeah, when you take a look at like a business class, right? You can kind of cook up these case studies that happened previously, but it seems in the realm of cybersecurity or privacy that there's something happening every month.
Yeah, I mentioned the Access Cyber. I think when we were communicating in email, sort of our bridge is sort of our STEM initiative, bringing high school students and college students or complementing their existing education or working with their interest in technology and cyber. So part of that is you mentioned case studies. One of the things we do is break down an incident. Equifax is the big one that we're using from last year. Still, others have happened, but still a big one we're using. So breaking down what's happened, who was targeted versus who was affected, because the company that was targeted isn't. Sure, they're affected, but what is the effect on consumers, on customers? How did it happen? What were the motivations? Who was targeting them? Why? And just kind of getting them thinking in terms of beyond technology also, right? What are sort of damages to the company beyond technical? What's the PR damage? What's the reputational damage of the company? So it's interesting to see a holistic approach.
That's really interesting too. It helps them, I think, to probably understand the economics of the whole cybersecurity environment.
Are you a CISO or information security manager challenged with tracking and managing information security incidents within your organization? If you are, you need to take a look at CSOBox, which is a software appliance built for NIST-compliant management of all types of information security incidents. CSOBox secures and protects sensitive incident data using technology accredited by U.S. federal intelligence agencies and gives your organization an efficient and streamlined process for incident handling. No matter if your business is large or small, we highly recommend the CSOBox solution as it's extremely easy to use, scalable, and a secure way to implement incident handling within your organization. For more information on the CSOBox solution and to schedule a demo, visit CSOBox.com/shared security. That's CISOBox.com/shared security. I think another important topic is mentorship of either up-and-coming cybersecurity talent or young individuals that have an interest in a cybersecurity career. In your opinion, what makes a good mentor, and have you been a mentor yourself?
Yeah, so I'll start that one. It's having coming from an education background where I've sort of worked in taught computer science and those environments as well, but coming from an educated perspective and now mentoring, I work with an organization called IQ4. So they're building out cyber curriculum, and what they're complementing that with is mentorship, right? So mentors will Skype in and they'll talk to the students and they'll weigh in on certain topics and kind of provide feedback and assignments. The important thing for me to remember is that a mentor is not necessarily an educator, right? They're just sort of guiding you towards the resources and therefore support. Too often the educator in me takes over and it's like, no, this is how you do it versus here's a resource. Yep. And kind of balancing that is a great balancing act, literally.
I just say, I think Gotham said it well, is that, you're not an educator, right? You're a mentor. And I think that the key, right, is to bridge them with the resources around them, right? So not just saying, I'm going to teach you this or whatnot, but, have you looked at this, or, have you gone to this meetup group, or have you gone to this local conference like a B-Sides, something of that nature, so that, if you happen to change fields, or if you happen to, jump to a different industry, right, that person's not just relying on you to help guide them, right? They've kind of got plugged into the network and they have other resources they could tap into.
Yeah, that's really important. And in fact, I remember there was a program that one of my former coworkers at my last job was involved with that allowed her to attend the Black Hat Security Conference in Las Vegas for free. And what was really cool was that this provided her some networking opportunities with speakers and some others in the industry, so that as she progressed throughout her career, she already had a lot of these great connections. I did want to touch upon, just in general, women and minorities in cybersecurity careers. I think that's another area that we just have a shortage in general, I think, with lack of talent. It doesn't matter what it is, but specifically around women and minorities, I think that's an important topic, because I know I strongly believe in a very diverse workforce in any industry or any career that you have. What are your thoughts on women and minorities in particular? How can we bring them more into cybersecurity careers?
Well, I think in computing in general, it's an issue, right? It's not just a thing specific to cybersecurity. I think that there's different actions we could take to help invite our female colleagues and make sure that we call out their accomplishments. Making sure that we invite them maybe to give a presentation to our team, or maybe nominate them for a promotion or some sort of award. But even just like being deliberate about maybe like once a month, just reaching out to a female colleague and learning about the type of work that they do. I think being a little bit more deliberate about that and making them comfortable in the workplace is key. But I also think that if we're doing any kind of outreach efforts, whether it be in the middle schools, high schools, or even college for that matter, if you have like a team that's going out to a middle school, high school, or college, that you also have a diverse team. The CS Plus group that we have, I make sure that we have a diverse group of members, because if I go to a school and it's all males that goes out there, right, that's sending the wrong message, right? I want the female students to recognize that this isn't just a male field, although the stats clearly show that it's a male-dominated field. But I want them to know that, look, there's females in our group too that are doing just as good of a job as the males, and just making sure that that's clear and they see that. The other thing too that we often find is that males tend to try to dominate the classroom or a particular activity, and there's research that shows that males, if they get, for example, males, if they get like a B, for example, like on a programming assignment, they think that they rocked it, that they knocked it out of the park, where a female will tend to think that they could have did much better. And so it's this perception too, as far as their skills in programming and just that general confidence in it. But I think being a little bit more deliberate about reaching out to our female colleagues and making sure that if we go do those type of outreach, or if we go to give a talk, that we have a good diversity within the group.
Yeah, really good points.
What's your take on that, Gotham?
Yeah, so very similar to what Dr. Krupp's saying about male-dominated, but not only for men, right? It's seeing the diversity, seeing that representation encourages students. Hey, that person looks like me, or hey, she's in it too. There's a lot of men, but hey, there are some women there. That can be me. Rewriting that narrative of women in tech is a big part of that. So I think Dr. Krupp hit all the main points there. Seeing yourself in those careers is when we're going out, we're doing that outreach, seeing yourself in those, in the people who are speaking. I saw recently a lot of people on LinkedIn posting this message, or I'm not going to take part in panels that don't have diversity or inclusion or a female speaker. I think that's a great movement, right? Because now it puts the pressure on organizers to say, hey, do we have that inclusion? Do we have that diversity? Right? There's no shortage. Certainly it takes a little more work because there's less women and diverse talent in the industry, but for organizers, definitely there's the impetus to look for that talent.
Yeah, I was actually going to say I've seen that, and I've seen maybe earlier on before that, more positive move started. It was incidents where someone would make a sort of a questionable comment, on Twitter or something, and you'd start to see people piling on them for, not being tolerant or sensitive. And that's a good thing, that we're seeing more support for, the positive nature of the environment, so that people aren't as scared to go into it.
There's also different types of events or organizations that are geared towards women in computing. Specifically, there's women in computing events. There's celebration events. Oakwick is one that's held in Ohio. I think it's over in the Sandusky area. There's also the ACMW chapter or ACMW group. So that's an organization that promotes women in computing. So there's a lot of different efforts in the area. What I think, though, is that males tend to think that, well, that's ACMW. I can't join that group because, well, it's ACM, for women. But that's entirely not true. The mission of it's much different, but it doesn't mean that males can't join that particular group, right? They can still go and encourage that. And I think that kind of just shows your support and recognition that there is a diversity issue in computing.
Yeah, you could do speaking engagements, for example, at those groups' meetings, which definitely shows support.
So, wrapping up the podcast, any final comments or thoughts?
If I can add one thing, I think it's really easy to put together a team and just get out to a school and work with your local schools just to do some sort of camp or some sort of event. It was something I started when I was at Highland Software and now at BW to get the community outreach program going. There are so many schools that would just love for you to come in, even if it's just for an hour. Some teachers have some schools have teachers that have a computer science background and they're able to teach programming. Oftentimes, what we've seen is that those teachers that had those skills get sucked up by industry, and then when they leave, that program's gone. So when you see schools that have that type of program, it doesn't seem to last too long. And so if you can just even cut out, maybe like an hour every other month and just visit a school and just, even if it's with a team, even just doing an hour of code or something simple like that, hopefully it piques the students' interest. There's been plenty of times where we went to schools and you get the people coming into class and they're kind of distracting, and you kind of wonder, okay, are they going to pay attention at all? And oftentimes what we find is those people that, really might not have put too much interest in that class, they come out wanting to know more and asking where can they learn more about computing. And the great thing now too is that, I think when we were learning, if you wanted to learn how to program, you had to get a book, or you had to attend a class, or you had to buy a compiler, or buy an IDE. Now all those tools are free, right? And there's so many tutorials online that if a student really wants to learn something, there's so many resources online where they can easily pick it up. So I would encourage anybody that is listening to the podcast, if they have some time, if they work in industry, even if they just get out to a school and just work with their local school and spend an hour there, maybe every other month, teach the kids something new about computing, and I think they'll definitely take you up on it.
Really good points. And actually, I was thinking of one question I wanted to ask you guys too, and that was more on the general sense of young people's perceptions of privacy and security these days. You might be a little more plugged into it than we are in general, but do you think that students understand the privacy risks on things like social media or the Internet of Things, and are they just accepting of them, or do they actually really need more information? Do they get more interested as they learn more?
I was going to say, sorry to interrupt, definitely a need for more awareness about these things, right? There's so often the trade-off is security and privacy for convenience, right? I can check in, here's my location, no one's following me, nothing's happening. It's sort of that, not ignorance, but it's like, what do I have to lose, right? It's not that big of a deal. But it's not just kids, it's the adults have the same issue, a lot of people on social media. And not that, boycott social media, but there's a smart way of using these resources as tools and for entertainment while being safe and protected. So definitely an educational component there.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and I think students are not aware of these privacy issues. They may hear about them on the news, but I don't think they put too much stock in them. When you look around campus, and this isn't just at our universities, pretty much anywhere, it's almost like you're watching a post-apocalyptic movie with zombies walking around, right? Like if a void were to open up in the earth, they would fall right through it. So many times I had students walk into me just because they're staring so much at their phone, and it's a challenge, right? Because they're always on there, they're always sharing data. I think even if they were aware of the privacy issues and some of the recent reports with Facebook is hopefully opening their eyes a little bit. It's hard for them, right? Because they've grown up in that world where they're constantly sharing, they're constantly posting. And there's that peer pressure there, right? So it's really hard for them to disconnect. So I think that even if there was awareness, I'm not sure it would change the behavior too much. I think that as Gotham pointed out, they kind of fall back on saying, I don't have anything to hide. I think the issue with that is that a lot of students, a lot of consumers don't realize that, well, I don't have much to hide if I just share my location this one time, right? Or if I just let this app use my location one time. But I think what's alarming though is when you actually see, once we take all that data together and we connect it with other brokers, what type of image that we can, or profile we can develop from you. We can figure out what time of day do you typically leave for work? What time of day do you typically get home? When do you pick up your kids from daycare, right? We can come up with all these daily patterns even though you don't have anything to hide. And if that information falls into the wrong hands, there could be some serious consequences.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And we see that too. I mean, up here in Canada, we've tended to focus a lot more on privacy issues. We have, some oversight bodies here that are pretty interested in communicating a lot of this stuff. And I think they try to get across the idea that you may not understand all of the risks of privacy, but privacy is really more about control of your information, right? And the more you give up control, you can never get it back in a lot of cases. So that's what we're trying to teach people here.
I was going to say, can you send some of those governing organizations down here to the States?
Tom keeps asking, but
I
yeah.
do. I'm waiting for the U.S. version of GDPR to take
Sure.
place, right?
That's it.
Yeah, I think that's what a lot of people don't realize, right? Is that once those bits leave your phone, leave whatever it is, you have zero control over it, right? And people need to be a little bit more aware of that. It's not like it's just some artifact that you can, kind of figure out, who has it now, right? It's something that could be duplicated, and you really can't keep track of where that information went.
Yeah, that's right. And it's not just the bits too, right? It's the actual laws, right? The more you give up in terms of privacy laws, you're never going to be able to change that back. It's going to be a hard fight to get more control on your data. Cool. Well, we really appreciate you guys having taken the time to join us. Some really interesting things and encouraging things that are happening with the student environment.
Yeah, Dr. Krupp, what's if someone wants to get a hold of you or find out more about what you're up to and what you're doing? How can they get a hold of you?
So they can shoot me an email at bkrupp@bw.edu. I do have a Twitter handle that I use occasionally. It's at Brian Krupp. And then my homepage is bw.edu/bkrupp.
Awesome. Thank you. And what about you, Gotham?
I'm really most active on LinkedIn these days, so my first and last name on LinkedIn is probably the best way to start.
Great. And we'll have Gotham's and Dr. Krupp's contact information on our show notes page. Thanks again to both of you for joining the show.
Thanks and take
Thank
care.
you.
Take care.